Brought to you by Dale Carnegie of Orange County, this is the 411 on Leadership podcast, where we discuss common sense leadership practices with executives in Southern California to transform you into the leader people want to follow. Welcome to the 411 on Leadership podcast here in our brand new studio here at Sitch Radio. My name is Steve Thomas. He is John Campbell, and we have a special guest that's going to be joining our discussion around how do we mitigate some of the effects of the oncoming or actually already existing Great Resignation through utilizing these inclusive leadership traits that we've been discussing. And to join us, we have none other than the founder and director of I5 Freedom Network, Mrs. Brenda Wells. Brenda, how's everything?
Everything's great. Thanks for having me this morning. Nice to be here.
So glad to have you. And Jonathan, John, always a pleasure. I gave him the full name, Jonathan.
You gave me some extra letters to the name, but
because I think you're that exquisite that
that's right.
I wanted to add to your complex nature.
Why are you saying John is a common name? Is that just kind of boring? We need to spice it up a little bit. So.
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, right.
But John,
there you go.
Who brings us here today?
Yeah, we are here, and thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure that you like and you subscribe. We want to hear from you. Comment today, because this is part of a discussion. You'll enhance our show as we are able to give feedback, hear what some of your thoughts are on things that are, or whether it's inclusive leadership, or as we're going to talk about the Great Recession and what's involved in that. But thank you
the recession's over, right?
The Great Resignation, not the recession, the Great Resignation.
We're jumping right back into a new one,
Yes, that's why we have experts on our show.
We're in a whole new zone of
that's right.
Great things, yeah.
But we always want to give thanks to Sitch Radio and Brian for making the show happen. Thank you so much for that, Brian. Take a look at Sitch Radio. You can link to them in our show notes because it's a fantastic place. If you're interested in podcasting, they will make it happen for you.
Well, not only again, we have Brenda joining us on our podcast, but one thing that we like to let you know about Brenda, because she doesn't like to brag about herself, but she's also a leadership facilitator and coach, in addition to being the founder and executive director with the I5 Freedom Network. And so with her work with different leaders and executives over the years, we thought you'd be a very valuable resource as we talk about what is now being termed the Great Resignation. And just to give you a few stats as it relates to what this is that we're finding, as a result of us now leaving the pandemic, there are a great number of people that are quitting their jobs. Just to throw you a few statistics to give you an idea. So this was according to the Department of Labor. In April, the share of U.S. workers leaving jobs was 2.7%, which was a jump from 1.6% a year earlier, which hadn't got to that highest level since 2000. And then one other tip as well, or not tip, but one other stat, and we'll be sharing some more of those stats throughout the podcast, is that according to a Microsoft survey, 40% of the global workforce is considering leaving their jobs this year. So we can only imagine the business disruptions, the turnover that can happen as a result. And so Brenda, if we can just throw this question to you, as we look at the Great Resignation, what are some initial thoughts that you have? What are some of the things that you've seen as you've communicated with different executives and leaders, especially in the hotel industry? Because I know that you have a lot of connections and a lot of conversations within that industry.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from executives and industries, across the gamut, is that obviously we had to shut down a lot of workforce because of the pandemic, and nobody really knew exactly how to regain that traction. But everyone thought the minute doors were open up again, everyone would come flooding back. Mm-hmm. That's not the truth. I think what happened with the pandemic is it really either forced individuals or gave them the opportunity to really define and distill what matters. What could they live with? What could they live without? And it allowed them to be more reflective if they were given that, that benefit of giving yourself the gift of time and really, really evaluating what matters to you as a person and a contributor to, the things that matter. Plenty of people were forced out, and, every dollar they made mattered. And the support that they got, which was really appropriate during the pandemic, the unemployment benefits. A lot of business leaders right now are blaming that continued benefit as to why people are not coming back into the workforce. But that's not exactly what I believe is true. I think what these articles demonstrate is like, I could go back, but that's not really the job I want anymore.
Right.
And they're being more thoughtful about that. And to the hotel and hospitality industry, that's a grind. I mean, that's a tough day's work, and you don't make a lot of money. And people, the industries are hoping people are going to come back at the same terms of which they left. And I think they now have some bargaining power. They're finding that the only way they're going to get people to come back is to really raise the rates and the benefits that go along with that work.
I remember one of the things that you just mentioned is just and it's something that we heard from Jason a few weeks ago as we were talking about, culture, is just the shifting of priorities, right? And just finding out that, hey, what was important a year and a half ago is not necessarily important now. And so, with that shifting of priorities, people are now, myself included, is now reassessing, what's important, what particularly I want to do or what my family wants to do within the next few years, and how does where I work or even everything that I do, how does that fit into that?
Well, and even those things that we've seen, we're here in Orange County in an urban area where it's not uncommon for people to expect a 40+ minute commute. I mean, we're talking anywhere from an hour to 2 hours in your car on a daily basis. That is sometimes, maybe if you're in sales and you can be on the phone a lot, maybe you can kind of redeem that time a little bit or whatever it is. But people are realizing, I think, through the shutdown also, that, man, that's 2 hours I get back with my family. That's 2 hours I can do with whatever I want instead of being, and there's some mental health, right? We know that driving in traffic is stressful on a lot of people. And so you've got these things, you've got people reevaluating, is this job, is this a career that I want to invest in my life? Is the stuff that I put up with, maybe the industry was difficult, maybe my boss and the culture, as we've talked, wasn't quite what I want it to be. Am I really willing to invest X number of years back in this industry? And now we've seen, wow, I have options.
Yeah. And I think maybe, those long commutes were based on, affordable housing and where the job was.
Right.
Or where home was, was significant for whatever reason. They can probably find the similar work closer to home and save all that gas. And I'm not sure if it's going to come up again, but, what jobs actually can be done remotely now.
Right.
I think that's a real big shift in a lot of industries, is what jobs can be done remotely. And there was a lot of recognition that many can be done remotely. It's going to require what I consider a mental shift in the leadership spaces. We worked with an organization over the last couple of months that's going through this right now. It's a manufacturing company that some jobs you have to be present for.
Right.
But a lot of the jobs they found could be done from anywhere. They were customer service where it's just answering calls. And they actually found that they could get more work done in less time from home. That really the only missing piece for some was the social piece, the social connection. But leaders have to be able to make the shift to, it's not what your time in this office is worth. It's what are the results of this job worth? What are the objectives worth? If you can do that in 20 hours instead of 40 hours, am I still willing to pay the same? How do I know you're doing the work? How do we measure the results if you're at home? So those are some things that need to be addressed.
Well, how do we address that from a leadership perspective, Brenda, if we're trying to evaluate these challenges, right? We've got employees who are looking at other options. How do I, as a leader, then, what are those thoughts that I need to begin engaging in to address those situations?
Thinking about that, the strategy podcast with Kurt, he talked a little bit about that, which is to a more collaborative and inclusive leadership, which is to start asking those questions of your team. What really matters? What can you do? And start getting the data and the input from the people who will be affected by those decisions. And not only will it help you form a stronger decision base, but they'll probably stay. If you're trying to avoid that great, exodus of your company, getting them to feel like they're a part of the solution and that you really are hearing their concerns is going to help that. And I think you just need to do what we call a green light session. Just bring people in and start getting all of the ideas together. And when we talk about green light sessions, similar to brainstorming, it's when all of the ideas come in and nobody gets to say why it won't work.
Okay.
Until all the ideas are on the table.
Go ahead.
Well, I actually wanted to get back, and we're going to circle back around there, but I just wanted to get back to drilling in on a couple of additional challenges, because one of the things that we've seen, obviously, is that contributors, there are those that we're all reassessing priorities. Whether contributors, leaders, doesn't matter.
Right.
We're all reassessing priorities. What would you say would be additional challenges other than reassessing priorities? Is it just that people are reassessing priorities, that they're wanting to leave their workplace? What have you seen or what have you heard that are additional challenges to that?
Challenges include whether they want to be around people again. There's a major
Very
health scare,
underestimated.
right?
Yeah.
There's a major health scare. People have things that they're concerned about, that they might not feel comfortable going back to the workspace if the company has not implemented certain protocols.
Yep.
There's, realities of, again, defining, do I really want to do that job from there? Can I do it from here? Do I like that job? Am I getting paid enough to do that job? Those are all a part of the calculus that I think everybody's making as they're redefining their roles.
Brenda, you hit that on the head, and I'll bring myself as an example to this, because it's such a real thing,
Right.
where, okay, now that we're exiting this pandemic, for me, it's been a process to almost reintegrate myself, if you want to call it, in society. I remember, I think it was about a month ago, I attended my niece's graduation. It was in San Diego, and as I was there, I felt that level of awkwardness, because I was vaccinated, everything was good, but then just being in front of people that with people that aren't masked, some that are masked, but then there were just a lot of people, and so there was that natural hesitancy and awkwardness, and it's I think it's something that's not really spoken of, or I heard, but it's so true that there is a process for us, for some of us who want to go back to social life the way it is, myself included, is there is a process that we have to go through to slowly kind of reintegrate ourselves and be comfortable where we're having discussions like this, and we don't have to worry about masks, or we don't have to worry about so much about COVID, in a sense. So I agree with you 100%. That's a huge deal. That's a huge deal.
And it's also creating, I think, some divisions within the workspace as well, depending on the size of the company. Another company, what I saw was, HR is up against some privacy rules where they can't ask if you've been vaccinated. They can't require you to be vaccinated, at least not under today's terms. So, but how do they know who's been vaccinated or not? Because they're trying to figure out how to integrate, the different departments and the different opportunities to work together. And so on their employee badge, they had an indicator about whether or not you've been vaccinated. Compared to the Starbelly Sneeches, do you have yours? Do you have yours? Yeah. You can come in here, you can't. And, and if, there's people who are choosing not to get vaccinated for a variety of reasons. And there are people who feel very strongly about everyone getting vaccinated. Those conversations right there are happening in the workplace. And we can see very clearly whether or not you've done that and are having the productive conversations. How are they able to bridge that very real obstacle in larger companies?
Well, let me ask this, because you addressed it, Brenda. There is one thing that all of us have all kind of looked at, and that's the socialization aspect of being in the office and being together. With the remote aspect, with us trying to keep employees engaged and not only just with the work, because the work is work, right? But part of the reason sometimes we stay at jobs is because we like the people we work with.
Yeah.
What are ways, or what are some ideas that leaders, managers can approach how to keep their teams engaged socially amidst this kind of, we're still in that flux?
it's going to come down to the opportunities at that company itself, whether they can say, like once a week we'll come in and have a powwow. We're doing meetings as opportunities, the hybrid workspace where we do some remote, some from home.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to a chief marketing officer, very social person, but he found he can do his work so much better remotely. And he's actually finding his ability to be social with other people that he couldn't have done at work.
Okay.
So he's manifesting or managing his ability to be social through other channels, not at work. So for him, that's all it took. But another person who was a customer service representative, she likes working from home. She's a very strong introvert, doesn't necessarily want to be with people on a regular basis, but she does miss the people, the small family that she's created there. So she wants to have a reason to go back, to be invited back. That doesn't feel like she's trying to, just be seen. Yeah. So it's the company size, it's the culture that has been created around that, and how creative can a leader be to bring their people in at any different space.
Anyway, we're talking with Brenda Wells. She is the executive director with the I-5 Freedom Network, also leadership facilitator and coach. And if you have any comments, please comment, subscribe to this content. I just have one quick comment, Brian, if you mind adjusting my mic a little bit. They're saying there's a note saying that my audio is a little off, but we're good. That's why we have Brian here, because he's our producer and he's always on top of it. So we love to hear from you. So, Brenda, we have been talking these last few podcasts specifically about inclusive leadership and what that looks like, and more specifically, what are traits that those that we lead are looking for from us to be more inclusive leaders. And so, my question for you would be, first and foremost, we'd love to get your take and understanding on what inclusive leadership means to you as you practice leadership within I-5, as you talk to different executives.
Well, I'm definitely a fan of inclusive or collaborative leadership. I work with a lot of volunteers and board members. And so getting them to feel like they have buy-in and contribution to whatever decisions and projects we're working on is critical, because they don't owe me anything. I'm not paying them for a lot of it. I need them to be excited. And in fact, we're kind of a beneficiary of that Great Resignation, by the way, because people, when they're trying to find things to do that matter, we've had an uptick in interest in volunteering for our cause, which is how do we fight human trafficking.
Yeah.
When it comes to the collaborative piece, it means that we have some objectives, we have some goals. What are some ways that we can do that? I've created some leadership, some small teams, and each team had a team leader identified, so that could be rotated. And it really allowed everyone to have a voice, especially in the remote space. It got really, really hard to find a way to stay connected when we were all remote. And so keeping ways to have meetings that were mattered, meetings that had meat to them, not just the point of getting together. Although we did do social things too. What are ways we can get to know each other? It's not just business. That was also something that we did. Those green light sessions I talk about, we have some ideas. All of my board meetings, I start with a question. What's the big question that we want to get answered today? So we spend more time in strategy and less in updates. But in the end, they want the leader to lead. We can spend a lot of time gathering questions or gathering input and gathering ideas, but at some point we have to act on that. And sometimes it's hard for leaders to say, okay, I like all your ideas, but I'm only going to go with the one. Somebody's going to be unhappy. Somebody's going to be challenged, but hopefully you've built the trust and the equity for them to recognize that the decision is based on, the time and the discerning thought, and really took all the things into account.
So well, definitely. Go ahead, John.
No.
Let me interrupt you. You're good.
No, one of the things that comes up often in our discussions is a reminder that people support a world that they help create. And so having those discussions, having your team involved, they're going to be more supportive, more loyal, more involved as you go forward, because they were part of the process.
Yeah, there was a while ago where I asked all the board members, we were back in person, so that's how long ago it was. We've had a turnover since then. But the question I gave to all the board members, like, if tomorrow you were put in charge of the organization and you got to set the priorities, what would be the first thing that you would work on? And we went around the table and everyone had a different passion around the work that we were doing, which was also really interesting. And it also allowed me to empower them to take that project on. So at first I got to hear what you wanted to do, and then I got to give it back and say, I think we should do that. And so it really got some strong, we got some great ideas. I got to hear from everybody else where if they thought we were on track or not, but also gave them some opportunity to make an impact of their own.
And to me, that is the story of the benefits of practicing that type of leadership, where everybody's voice is heard, and then getting that information, then acting on it and utilizing that to really make the whole organization a better place to work. And for the person that have given the ideas, that whether or not may have been chosen or not, because a lot of times, obviously, as you mentioned, they're not chosen. However, they do form the basis for another idea to be built on top of that one, or at least to get us all thinking in a specific direction that'll help us to arrive to the idea that best works for our organization. And I think having situations like that or stories like that where everybody's having their input, everybody's talking, everybody's making sure that we're acting on what's given, I think that's the thing that really helps and empower those that are there to do great work, especially as we are dealing with this great resignation. So, we've been talking about, again, these last few weeks about specific traits and as it relates to inclusive leadership and how we could mitigate the Great Resignation. Really what that is we want to be able to retain the people that we have, because we know the challenges of getting people. And I know that there are tons of statistics out there as it relates to turnover, and the cost to the organization. Dale Carnegie, I like to say, has about 30 human relation principles that I look at as strategies on what we could do to help maintain the people that we already have. So, if we can talk about that, what are the one or two Dale Carnegie principles that stand out to you, Brenda? I'm curious also to hear from you, John, as well. Your thoughts are, what are those specific principles or strategies that are relevant for businesses today to help keep their people and really use this as a catalyst to build an even more awesome workplace culture?
There's so many that are coming to my mind. The first one is, try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. And that's that whole inclusive lead, like get in the buy-in, have the green light session, get their input. I think not only will help them feel like they are a part of it, you're going to get insights that maybe you didn't have. And I think that's really important. I like the principle where we give them a fine reputation to live up to. Yeah. And that gives, if people feel valued, make the person feel important and do it sincerely, they all weave in there. That leads to giving them a fine reputation to live up to, so they feel like they're important. They're critical part of the success in a way that's not, I don't just need a body, I need your contribution because of who you are.
Give us an example of that one, Brenda, because sometimes that one maybe is harder for someone to understand. Like, how do you give somebody a fine reputation to live up to?
So that would be where, so I work with some interns. Okay. And we have an intern right now who I've given her the opportunity to really spruce up our Google My Business page, our Google for Nonprofits, to improve our SEO, our Google rankings and all that sort of stuff. And pretty much I said, you're technology savvy, you're a young person, you know how to do this. Outside of the spending, I really believe that you are going to really turn this page into something that's going to make an impact for us. I believe in you, and I think you're the right person for this. And she's jumped on it. She's already gotten done some things that all it took was the right person to focus on it. Yeah. Because we didn't have the right person to focus on it, and she's really passionate about making an impact now. And so I think that's she's going to be able to walk away from this internship having a real thing to say she did, not just get coffee and make copies. She's doing some real powerful stuff. And so that's an example. I have another team member who just loves to be involved in anything. I could call him my chief missions officer because he really focuses on getting things done, but he has to know what it is to do. So I'll put in some high level objectives and I say, I know you can do this. You've done fantastic work. I really believe in what you're doing. And when I do that, he shows up with some fantastic ideas and results.
It's really awesome because you've found someone's gifts and their interests and speaking into that and then giving them ability to then move forward and to own that space. And because it's something that, you've said, hey, you're good at this, help us make it better. That's
whenever we
fantastic.
work with volunteers, we say, what do you like to do?
Mhm.
First, and I'm sure we could find a way to plug that interest in. Somebody, if you have an accountant who wants to volunteer, we assume they want to be the treasurer. Well, maybe they don't want to deal with money during this. They want to do something else.
Yeah.
Some people, that's exactly what they want to do. So you have to, there's a part of the conversation about what are you passionate about? What about this problem, this cause of fighting human trafficking speaks to you, and how can we use that to, make you feel like you're making something happen?
We do have a comment from one of the users that says this is why company culture is so vital to talent retention, because team members are likely to be more productive when engaged and when feeling like their company or manager values them. And I think you spoke to that, really giving them that fine reputation to live up to, and then empower them and to let them know what you want.
Mm-hmm.
You want a page that you want it. You've got the skills. Now let's make it happen.
Yeah. And that comes down to effective delegation as well, right?
Sure.
And I'm such a collaborative, inclusive leader that I can probably err too far on the side of giving them more space than they feel comfortable about. As a strategic thinker, that's definitely a place where I, on all those assessments that where I tend to score strong. I think that everyone thinks like me and you're going to figure this out. Well, that's not always true. So I need to be a little bit more engaged along the way, because delegation is not abdication. And a lot of times we think when we give somebody an opportunity to try something that it's, we just tap out, and that's not true. We need to maintain our presence and be a resource with enough support so they know that they can't fall or fail, but not so much where they feel like they're not being trusted or they're being micromanaged. There's a line there that each person is also going to be in a different place on that too.
And I just want to drill down on what you said earlier in terms of and this is even a practice that I know we speak primarily to leaders and influencers, but it really applies to everybody in the workplace, where it talks about try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. Because if we look at it from the business perspective, obviously we have to know that, businesses are in business to make money, right? And so it's important for us, as we are having those conversations, whether it be people that work for us or whether people that we're working for, that we go into these times and meetings with the attitude, okay, well, what are they trying to accomplish? Because businesses, I think sometimes, get a bad rap, like, oh, okay, well, we're terrible, we're forcing people to go to work, and I mean, there's a stark discrepancy where executives who want people to go back to the workplace or go back to the physical office, and contributors who don't. But then the point is there needs to be not so much conversation, obviously conversation, but we need to look at where each other is coming from.
Right.
And we can't just expect that managers or leaders only, just primarily listen to them and do everything they want and just kind of acquiesce, because that's not necessarily realistic. And I think that it won't get the result that you're looking for long term. And I'll give you a brief example of this. I remember having a discussion, with my boss, Jerry, we're going to have you on the podcast sooner rather than later. So be ready for that. But, we had a conversation as it relates to, working back in the office and working from home. And so what I appreciate about Jerry is that she listened to, where I was coming from as it relates to my views on being back in the office. At the same time, I did listen to Jerry as she articulated, the needs of the business. And I really feel that we came to a productive solution that works for both of us. And that's something that'll be reassessed. And so I bring that up because, again, when we see things from the other person's point of view, we're able to have those constructive conversations where, yes, our leaders are seeing where we're coming from, but it's important for us to see where they're coming from as well, and really come to that mutually beneficial solution that's not only going to benefit the organization, but also benefit us as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things I do with that particular perspective is, especially as leaders, it's easy to have an idea that you feel really strongly about.
Sure.
You're committed to, and people don't always see it the same way. And so
Yes.
what I end up doing is I have just a mantra, if you will, or a mind perspective that I go into those conversations with is I lead with my evidence, with my perspective, but I also end with, but I might be wrong about that.
Mhm.
Tell me what you have. you
Yeah.
know? And just by putting that one phrase in my head, I might be wrong about that, or I might have something to learn about that. Some people have a hard time admitting wrong in any context. So if you have something to learn, it's a great way to open your mind to the other person's point of view. Just that one thought makes a big difference.
Keeping
And
that lines of communication open.
yeah, and always understanding that we need to be open because there could be something we're missing.
Mhm.
So thank you for
I
that.
call that my graceful exit strategy.
Yeah.
And I give that to other people
There
too.
you go.
Because if I don't do that and I'm sold on my idea and the evidence shows up later that I might have not made the right decision, I have now painted myself in a corner.
Yeah,
Mm,
right.
mm.
But when I have that, but I might be wrong about that, or I have something to learn, that's my graceful exit strategy where I can then lean into alternatives.
That's awesome. Thank you, Brenda, so much for being here today. I
Brenda,
mean,
you're awesome.
yeah, I mean, we always want more, so we're gonna have you come back again. And I know that for those that are listening and watching us today, that there are ways to get in touch with you, Brenda. What's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
Well, I'd like you to reach out to me via my company website. So that's
Okay.
Brenda at i5freedomnetwork.org. That's my organization. That's the letter I, the number 5, freedomnetwork.org. You can go to our website is i5freedomnetwork.org. www comes first if you need that. And that's the best way. I'm on LinkedIn. If you hit me up on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect.
Brenda Wells. So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's who I am.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Brenda, for joining us. John, it's always a joy and a pleasure that we get to talk about this. And if you have any additional questions or want to reach out to us, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, either myself or John, or even our company page, Dale Carnegie of Orange County, or the 411 on leadership as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember that managers light a fire under people while leaders light a fire in people. Have a great week.
Thank you.